All right, we're here with number two. We've got Astrid Gooding from Terminal 3 Indie Survival Guide, Mastering Business Development on a Budget. That is so super important. Thank you so much, Astrid, and take it away.
Thank you. And hi everyone. It's so great to, actually not to see you all here today, but nevertheless, I'm like super excited to dive into one of my favorite topics, which is business development. But before we get started, I'm going to quickly introduce myself. I'm Astrid. I have been in the video and mobile games industry forever, for almost 2 decades, 15 plus years. I've been working across business development, strategic partnerships, and event creation. I spent years helping DevCom, which is Europe's biggest B2B event, or biggest B2B game developer conference, where I built partnerships, expanded markets, and co-curated the Indie Expo program. And today I work for Terminal 3, where I focus on optimizing payment solutions and global partnerships for publishers and developers. And alongside that, I have also co-founded As One Not-for-Profit, which is an initiative dedicated to creating safer and more inclusive spaces in the games industry through data-driven research and advocacy. I also regularly speak at conferences worldwide where I can share insights on business development, publishing strategies, networking, emerging markets, and DEI. And some of my recent talks were, for instance, at Moby Dictum, or I spoke at the Zambia Game Developers Connect. I did something for Taiwan Plus, which is a TV channel, and I think Nonida was also last year. On a personal note, I am currently still recovering from a major ankle surgery. So if you go to GDC and see someone with curly hair limping around, it will be probably me. Come over, say hi. What should I say? That has been a very interesting challenge, slowing down after so many years of almost constant traveling for work and events. But one thing that has made my recovery really is so much more easy is my senior cat, Susie. So Susie is the true queen of my life, and she, of course, knows it. And, she judges about everything I do. She contributes nothing, and yet somehow still manages to run like the entire household. So I would say she basically pretty much is a typical cat. And yes, I love her very much. And, speaking of queens, let's talk about ruling your own kingdom in the games industry. Just like, Susie always knows how she can get my attention, a well-done business development strategy also will help your studio to stand out in a not only crowded, but almost saturated market. Right now, the industry is more competitive than ever. We have every day hundreds of new games that hit the platforms and stores. And according to estimations that were done by Eurogamer, we have over 19,000 new games that were released on Steam only in 2023 alone. I did some little math, that is 52 games per day. And I recently read that there's new numbers for 2024, which was over 60 games per day on Steam. And Valve also, published that most indie games on Steam sell fewer than 500 copies in their first year. That is not the best perspective, right? We are not even talking about mobile games right now, because if we add them as well, the number is skyrocketing. Like in 2022, the Google Play Store had over 400,000 new games launched, and that is so crazy much. So yeah, that is the reality that we are dealing with, that we're all dealing with. So how can you make sure that your game doesn't get lost in all the noise? And the answer is business development. Business development is what helps, you build partnerships and get funding and secure the publishing deals and get connected with your players and all that crucial elements that, really ensure that your game doesn't just get made, but actually reaches an audience. And here's the good news. Business development is not just for big studios. It is a misconception that you need a dedicated team or significant financial resources to engage in BD effectively. Indie devs can and absolutely should integrate business development into their workflow at any stage, whether you are like in early development and seeking, initial funding or feedback to shape your game's direction, or if you're preparing for launch, working on visibility, partnerships, and, marketing strategies, scaling post-release, exploring new monetization models, platform expansions, regional markets. A well-planned BD strategy really ensures that your game doesn't just exist, but that it does thrive in an incredibly competitive industry. And, let's face it, you can make the best game in the world. If no one knows about it, it won't succeed. And So since this is, we're talking about business development for indies, I absolutely get it. Most probably you will be part of a small team or maybe even a solo dev. And then, business development can feel like an afterthought. You were already juggling multiple roles. Maybe you are a designer and programmer and community manager and social media handler, and now you're also a business developer. And I can understand, it can feel like one more thing to worry about, and about something that requires time and energy and skills that you maybe not even feel confident in. But there is the thing, BD is not about doing everything at once. Very good, not everything at once, but it is about making smart and manageable moves that, compound over time. And that is where many indies, and not only indies, that is actually where many business developers business development managers fall into a trap of thinking, that BD is only about like making big deals and like the big events and the big industry connections. But like in reality, some of the most successful indie studios started like super small, and they were focusing on building, meaningful relationships and marketing making, strategic and like well-timed decisions. And that is where this session hopefully comes in. So my goal for today is that we can break business development down into very simple, actionable steps that, don't require massive budget, or a dedicated team or an extensive network. And still, like by the end of the session, I hope that you know like what BD really is and what it's not, and why it is essential at every stage, of development, how you can integrate it into your workflow, and which practical low-cost strategies you can start using right away. So yeah, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. With the right approach, it can become like a natural part of your studio's long-term success. So what is business development, especially for indies? Many think that BD is, just signing deals, getting a publisher, securing funding, and so on. But it's not only that. BD is so much more than, just contracts. It's about creating opportunities and, building relationships and, making sure that your studio thrives. And some of you might be thinking like, but I'm a developer, like I'm not a business person. Like, do I really need this? And you know what? Yeah, the answer is yes. The games industry is brutally competitive, and thousands of new games like releases every month. And, business development will help you to gain the visibility and to secure funding and to get the publishing deals, and also to build long-term relationships. And, BD will also help you to diversify your revenue streams, which will help you with the revenue growth. So you really don't have, to master everything at once, but you must know like what is the key areas of business development, and you must focus on the right thing at the right time. So different key areas that are all falling into business development. I will go into those different 5 points that I have listed here. But I will not speak too much about all of them because actually, almost all of those like different headlines or topics could fill like 1 hour presentation or 1 hour talk here. Let's start with networking, right? So networking can feel very awkward, like even for me. And you know what? I tell you something, the more people you know, like the more easy it gets. And the more people you know, the more doors open. Um, I mean, yeah, where can you network? I mean, obviously, very obviously, you can network at events. There is tons of events. There is GDC coming up. There is 3 Gamescoms now in, I don't know, Latin, Cologne, Asia. You have all the Pocket Gamer events, Tokyo Game shows. There is a tons of events that you could go to like in person. You could also network online on Discord. You can network on Reddit. You can use LinkedIn. You can use social platforms, also to connect with publishers and investors and journalists. And I want to give you like a couple of like small but very effective networking tips. Like no matter if you are like on site with someone, like at an event, or if like network online, always have a clear introduction of yourself ready. Like, who are you and what do you do? Like, have that ready that you don't start stumbling around. And to give you a little example, I just recently, actually not so recently anymore, like 5 months ago, I changed jobs. I worked for DEFCON over 7 years and now work for Terminal 3. And I was very lucky. I could go to an event for Terminal 3 after being with the company for maybe 1.5 weeks. And I went to that event, and even, even I met like so many people that I know since years. It felt like weird and like a little bit off, the first times to introduce myself with my new title and my new job, the new company, the new products. And it's like seriously, like there is no shame in practicing, because introducing yourself, telling people who you are, what you do, it becomes much more easier the more often you do. So just go and like practice. Why not? Just practice. Engage early. Many people, underestimate how powerful relationships are. And relationships aren't just transactions. So it's better, to engage already with people before you actually need something from them, or, want to have their support on something. And then there is something that is actually also so obvious, but so many people fail on that, and this is following up. And I mean, follow-ups are very, very important because, they remind people who you are. And because that is so important, we will actually talk about follow-ups later again at some other point. Reality check is that every successful studio builds relationships. And, if they can, you can too. Like, don't worry, you can too. Next up is pitching. And pitching is one of the points that I really don't want to talk too much about, that because pitching is like really a topic that can fill not only 1, but 2 or 3 hours of presentations and talks. So I will make it very short and concise. And concise is also like the key word when it comes about pitching. What makes a strong pitch? There is the 1 sentence rule. If you cannot explain your game in 1 clear sentence, like you need to either rethink your game or like do the sentence like so often again until you can. What is your unique selling points? Like what makes your game stand out like on that very saturated market? Market fix. Like, who's your audience? Who's going to buy your game? Because there is so many, in the same genre already. And then, when you have thought about all that, you need to think about how you can improve your pitch. Practice your pitch as well, and practice it, for different situations. Like there is a 10-minute pitch, there's also a 30 seconds pitch, right? Create a nice little pitch deck. But make it nice, make it short, make it interesting, show, and don't just tell, but don't make it boring. And then, very important, tailor your pitch for your audience. Investors, are more interested to learn about the return of interest than journalists. Journalists, are more interested in an interesting story. And publishers, want to maybe want to talk, more about market and that kind of stuff. So have different pitches ready, not only as a pitch deck, but also, in your mind for different targets groups. Pitching is storytelling, so make sure that your pitch actually that it works, make it care. Follow-ups. I said it before, and I actually cannot believe that we have to talk about that, but reality is we have to talk about that. That is not an indie problem. That is a big problem in our industry. I swear, it's huge. A lot of people completely fail in following up, and that is a big mistake. And I tell you, follow-up matters, because here's the thing: you are busy, I get it, but people are also busy, and they will most probably they will not remember about you, they will forget about you. So you need to follow up with them. You want something from them, you need to follow up with them. Be specific when you follow up, mention your conversation. That makes it more easy for them to remember you and what you talked about. Also, it makes it more easy for you to remember about them and what you talked about with them. Because, at some events, you will probably talk to 30, 40, 50, 100 people. And following up with all of them, if you don't follow up with them, then in time aren't specific, you will probably also forget what your conversation on site was about. So this takes time, and one meeting will not be enough. And if you want to have more meetings, you will need to follow up. My own rule is that I follow always up within 48 hours, actually within 12 to 48 hours. When I'm on big events like GDC, I actually follow up right after the meeting that I had, because at GDC I really have back-to-back meetings that is 12 to 15 meetings per day. And if I wouldn't follow up with the people right away, I would simply forget what I actually talked about with what person. If they still not if there is no response, follow up again, within 1 to 2 weeks. Share an update about you, the game, your life. No, not about your life, but share an update about the game, what happened in between, and so on and so on. And as I said before, no deal was ever made with one meeting. Reality check is that 80% of deals take 5 follow-ups until they're done. And experience is that I have from our industry that most follow-ups stop after 1, if there was even 1. Partnerships. Growing beyond, hoopala, there is a typo, beyond one game. So partnerships, are very important, because you don't want to make only one game. You actually, ideally want to stay in that industry for a couple of years and want to be around for a couple of games. So you really need to work on your partnerships, and there is different partnerships for different things that you would need, right? Business development, again, is not just about sales, but again, it is about finding the right partners for the right things. So different partnerships are, for instance, what do you need? Partnerships with publishing and distribution partners, for support and funding or marketing or game distribution. Then you could have cross-promotion partnerships with, for instance, other indies, because collaborating with developers of similar genres, and that share audience can help. You could, have bundles or something like that. You can have partnerships with content creators and influencers, partnering with Twitch streamers, YouTubers, game journalists, all that people to build visibility. Localization porting deals, expanding your game to new languages and platforms through strategic partnerships. Because new markets, means like more revenue. Um, so how do you build all those partnerships? Always think win-win. Like a partnership should be mutually beneficial. Like maybe think first, like what value can you offer? Is there something that you can offer? And I will even go that far that I tell you that I think that this is one of the most important things actually in partnerships. And whenever I have the chance, like to offer something to anyone or to help out someone, I always do, because I always, think myself like that can maybe return at some point where I need help. That is how you create partnerships. Um, then, start small, collaborate on cross promotion campaigns, maybe before, committing to a full scale partnership, and use your existing relationships, your network, like all the efforts that you take that will feed into partnership opportunities over times. Yeah, partnerships, it takes time, but they will transform into success. And the last pillar of our business development key areas is monetization, the plan, for revenue. So what is interesting that really a lot of studios completely forget about monetization until it's too late. They don't think about all that stuff until their game is launched. And that is really, really, really too late. I mean, what they mostly or most time, of course, do, is like think about monetization models, like is a premium, with a one-time purchase, will I offer DLCs and so on, will I do free to play with microtransaction, or maybe subscription based, then also, merge licensing, like that kind of stuff. They do sometimes, most times, of course, think about that, but not beyond that until it is launched. And yeah, monetization, unfortunately, is not just a post-launch concern, because like you should know, how your game will make money long term before you launch it. And for that, you need to research like platform revenue shares, like Steam, Epic, Nintendo, and others, and take all the different revenue cuts. And you really need to diversify like your income streams. Don't rely solely, only on your launch sales. Think about bundles like crowdfunding, Patreon. I heard like only yesterday that Patreon apparently is really coming back like in North America. So yeah, reality check is many studios fail because they don't really plan how their game will actually make money early enough. And, that is a big part of BD. And it's not just an afterthought. So yeah, again, business development is not about doing all those things, at the same time, but it is about doing the right things at the right time. And by integrating all that, what we just, talked about, like networking, pitching, follow-ups, partnerships, and monetization strategies into your studio's workflow, you will set up yourself for long-term success. And yes, that even goes for solo developers. And yes, even solo developers can benefit from integrating BD into their strategy. So whether you are a small team that is looking for funding, or a publisher, or a solo dev, that is looking for visibility, or a current studio that is planning your next step, like business development will help you to build the future of your game and your studio. Because again, you don't want to only do one game, you ideally want to make multiple games. And I'm not going to lie to you, there is tons of challenges, especially for indie studios when it comes to business development, because it can freaking feel overwhelming. Unlike AAA studios, you won't have a dedicated BD team. And, instead of that, you would juggle like multiple roles. And that is very hard. There's very many hats reality often leads to struggles. And, struggles are not a good thing, but the good thing is it's common struggles. So we can identify them and work on them. So let's maybe sum them quickly up, that you are not, like struggling, not making that mistakes. Again, like missed follow-ups, I'm not getting tired of like mentioning that because it's happening so often and so bad. Yeah, many indies really assume that a great first meeting means like success. Yeah, no, BD is a long game, and without proper follow-ups, even the best opportunity will fizzle out. Unrealistic meeting preparation. So that is something that I also often experience. People going into a meeting without a clear agenda, and that makes it very hard to turn conversations into concrete results. Time constraints, business development isn't always an urgent task. And, it very often falls to the bottom of the priority list until it's too late. And I mean, let's be very honest, very often it falls, it falls to the bottom of the priority list until it becomes urgent. And when it becomes then urgent, then it is really too late. So yeah, limited resources. I mean, we talked quickly about like major events like GDC, Gamescom, Tokyo Game Show, yada yada. That might feel out of reach, like due to travel and ticket costs. That I get that. I get that. And then you know what? Like lack of knowledge. Many teams focus on game development first without realizing how crucial BD is, before lunch. And here is good news. It doesn't have to be so overwhelming. And there is actually also, there is teams that have found like very creative ways to integrate BD into their workflow without massive budgets. And I would like to look at 3 real world examples. I would like to look into 3 real world examples that are really like a success story. As I said, like business development strategies don't have to be expensive or complicated, but they need to be thoughtful and intentional. And that is why I picked that 3 examples, because they were all very thoughtful and I say also intentional. Celeste is a perfect example of how you can build buzz through community engagement. When you're into platformers with like super tight controls and a very emotional storytelling, then you have probably played or at least like heard of Celeste. And what many people don't know is that Celeste actually started as a very small game jam prototype that was built in just 4 days by Maddie Thorson and Noel Barry. And at first, the game was just a fun challenge, and it was created for the Pico 8 Fantasy console. But the early feedback from the other people at the game jam, like the players, the industry peers that then turned into players, like it was so positive that the team really decided to expand the idea into a full game. And this is where their business development strategy began, long before the actual launch. So what they did, they leveraged game jams to test ideas and gain early visibility. Instead of developing completely in isolation, they put their work out into the world very early and allowed people to see the game, and also that allowed them to see how the players actually responded. And the prototype went viral in the game dev community, showing that the game really has super, super strong potential. And with that, they engaged with the community really from day one on. Maddie and Noel really actively interacted with all the early players, taking their feedback super seriously. And they really, built a relationship with like the streamers and the game journalists like super early on, ensuring that when the full game finally launched, that there was already a lot of hype and like interest in the media. So they pretty much created a super loyal fan base before the launch. And by the time the game officially launched, they had like thousands of players already like so invested in the game's success. And this, this really meant like organic marketing where the fans like did actually much of the promotion like themselves. And the results, I mean, yeah, it was a breakout indeed. It won multiple awards. And it proved, that early community building is really a powerful BD strategy. And the lesson here is, that game jams and grassroots marketing And early, community engagement are some of the best ways actually for indie devs to gain momentum, because you don't need a huge budget for that. You just need the willingness to share your game very early and connect with your players. Little bonus example, by the way, it's not only Celeste that took that path. The Swiss Studios Trayphon, that started the Wandering Village. That was also a game jam project in the beginning, where it then quickly gained like a lot of interest. So that team also leveraged then, in Kickstarter and engaged with the community through early playtests and built like a dedicated audience before the launch. So like Celeste, that game was really a success, fueled by its early and active player engagement. Proving once again that BD, is again not just about deals, but about building relationships. Hades. Supergiant was already a super well-known indie studio thanks to their previous hits, and I know there are so many discussions if we can call them indie or not, but for that case we can. But like even experienced indie teams like need a strong BD strategy, and Hades was their first game to fully embrace like early access as a business development tool. Instead of doing a traditional full release, they decided to launch an early access first, using replayer feedback to shape the game. And that way, they turned the early access into a real BD advantage, because instead of treating, early access as just a funding tool, they actually use it to like really actively refine the game over time. And the players felt like they were part of the development journey, which of course increased, their emotional investment in the game. So in early access, they already built a long-term relationship with their community, and Supergiant actively engaged with the players. They really listened to the feedback and adjusted the gameplay mechanics based on the real-world data. And they did not just take the feedback, but they acted on it. And that really, that was really keeping their community involved and excited throughout the process. So they really created a very strong word of mouth marketing. And by the time the game was launched, it already had a dedicated fan base and widespread media coverage. So yeah, the game's, very long development cycle actually allowed it to slowly grow in reputation rather than having a short-lived hype cycle. And the results, I mean, yourself, it became a massive indie success story. It won like multiple awards. It broke like sales records. And it was really proving that early access like can be powerful as a BD tool and not just as a funding method. So the lesson here is that if your game has a strong replayability and, like an engaged audience, like you can consider early access strategically, not just to make money, but, to refine your game and build a fan base already and to gain a long-term support. So last but not least, Dorfromantik, which is a great example how you can grow a community through Twitch. Unlike the other games, which completely relied, on game jams and early access, the developers at Tucana Interactive took a complete other different approach to BD. They did not focus on publisher deals or traditional marketing at all. Instead, they built their audience through Twitch streaming. So on two ways, actually. So first of all, they completely streamed the development process on Twitch, and instead of just like posting updates, they really live streamed the entire game's development, and that gave future players a front row seat into the creation process and made them feel emotionally super invested, in the game's journey. And by engaging, directly with viewers, they were turning them into early fans already. So smart. The developers didn't just, stream gameplay. They talked to their audience, and they took their suggestions, and they made their viewers feel like super involved. And this built like such an incredibly like tight-knit, like supportive community that felt like personally connected to the game. And I mean, that game that had an audience ready before launch day already. Like by the time the Dorfromantik was released, they already had like a dedicated group of fans eager to buy and to promote the game. And like, the launch, it didn't feel like a release. It felt like a celebration. And because, the fans had been part of the journey for so long. The result is that Dorfromantik became a critically acclaimed hit, also winning multiple awards and showing that Twitch streaming can be an effective BD strategy, even for games that, aren't traditionally like streaming friendly titles. And what is like an additional like bonus here, what I find very sweet as well, although the game started completely on Twitch, it also became a board game that also won like, the Game of the Year award. So it's nice to see, like how far they came and like how much success they had. So yeah, the lesson that we can learn from them is that if you cannot afford big marketing campaigns or industry events, live streaming can be a powerful tool to build visibility and to build, like community engagement. And I would say like the key takeaways, from those stories is that BD can take like very different forms, like really depending on the goals of the studio and the resources. So Celeste really used like grassroots marketing, game jams, and community engagement. Hades like leveraged early access as a BD tool to refine gameplay and build loyalty, but also no, not also. To refine gameplay and build loyalty. And Dorfromantik, they really focused on live streaming to create a direct connection with their future players. And so what do they all have in common? Ta-da-da! Relationships. Business development is about relationships. Whether it's players, publishers, investors, it's about building trusts and engagement and excitement. And, that can really set your game up for long-term success. And the best part is that none of these strategies like required a massive budget. That were just like really smart, intentional decisions. So yeah, now that we have seen how BD actually helped indie studios grow, let's talk about how you can apply strategies to your own studios, even if you're working on a tight or not existing budget. So up next is a bit more like practical strategies, I would say, that you can start using right away. So we have learned already that BD is not just networking and pitching, and that it shouldn't be treated as a one-off task. Let's dive deeper into how BD actually fits into your entire development cycle, and how you can apply it effectively, like no matter the size of your team. Business development works best when integrated in your studio's long-term strategy, because that really, ensures that your game gets the visibility and the funding and the partnerships at the right time. So yeah, how can it actually fit into your development timeline? Business development should evolve alongside your game. What you focus on will change depending on where you are in the development cycle. And the pre-development phase, like before you even start working on your game, you should be thinking about who your audience is and where your game fits in the market. Like ask yourself, like, what games are similar to mine and how do they perform? Who would be most excited about playing this, right? And which publishers or platforms or funding sources align with my vision? That is also the best way and also the best time to start like networking, because you don't need a finished game, to introduce yourself to industry peers or join Discord communities or start following like potential publishers and partners. Relationships. BD is about forming relationships. So at that point, you can already start forming relationships because they take time to develop as well. In the early development phase, like once you have started working on your game, you maybe want to share your progress. I actually would recommend you to share your progress. Indie devs who regularly post updates, whether on Twitter, No, actually, you know what? I don't want to promote Twitter here. Whether on Blue Sky or Reddit or Discord, yeah, they really build like early engagement that can later be leveraged for partnerships or crowdfunding. And this is also a good time to research your funding options. Like grants or investors, or even like early stage publisher discussions. Even if you're planning to self publish, understanding your monetization strategy early is very crucial, and that would be the right point here, the right point of time. Pre-launch phase, as your game nears completion, your BD efforts become like really more intense. You will want to like secure the press coverage. You will want to engage with the platforms. You will want to plan all the partnerships. Like all that stuff, ensures that your game doesn't launch into the void, but like launches with momentum.
Hi, Astrid. I'm going to interrupt you for a second. It does not look like your presentation has went past the BD success stories.
Thanks for pointing that out.
You're welcome.
And sorry for that, for all the listeners.
That's okay.
I'm sorry,
That's
I got
okay.
caught in a moment, like because I'm so engaged with the topic.
You're a BD person, not a techie person,
I'm a
right?
BD person, I'm so used to talk and talk and talk.
No.
So I will go on with talking because we also need to consider our time. Yeah, post launch. I mentioned it before, so I would take it, but keep it very short at that point. After the launch, BD doesn't stop, but that is the time where you will actually like have to explore like new revenue streams, consider localization and porting opportunities, and maintain relationships with the players that you already have and the partners and the platforms for long-term success. So yeah. It is not a last minute task, but really about like choosing, the right approach for your studio, and like asking yourself like what you need most. And since this, is about low budget strategies, I actually finally want to really talk about a bit more low budget strategies. Let's get into practical stuff. Yay! Which realistic BD strategies can indie studios actually really use without breaking the bank? And you know what? Like one of the easiest thing is really networking and visibility without expensive events. Not everyone can actually afford to fly to GDC or Gamescom or wherever. Like that is okay, because business development is not limited to in-person events. You can join like industry service, like here the indie game business server on Discord, for instance, is a perfect example, where you can connect with like industry peers, with other devs that are active. You will also probably find or connect there with other publishers or journalists. Like there is so many Discord servers. I really recommend like considering Discord as a serious BD opportunity, especially as an indie studio. You can absolutely use like Meet to Match for publisher outreach, even if you're not attending an event. Very often, you can buy like a Meet to Match ticket like separately. So Meet to Match is a third-party meeting platform or matchmaking platform that is not necessarily part of the event. So very often you can still like buy the ticket for Meet to Match even if you're not attending on site at the event, and like make a lot of connections. And here's the thing, many business development connections like start online. So use Meet to Match if you can afford the tickets, and like generate all the leads. And then go and pitch your game. You can pitch your game even like without conferences. You can pitch it either for platforms or features, but you can also pitch like code. Code outreach can really work, and especially if it's done professionally. And I think that is the feedback that I got very often, that since the pandemic hit, and also since the pandemic is done, but since we all went through Corona, a lot of publishers actually really like and prefer cold outreach or email outreach, or even offer now forms, etc., on their website, where you can fill in like your data if you want to reach out to them over event participation. And that is, by the way, also something that I and maybe that is only my, I don't know, but my feeling for this year. So, for instance, at GDC, I mean, there is, all the big publishers. I saw them all in the meeting platforms, but it feels, they are going there with less people, and maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's because of that. Then, like pitch deck. Yes, pitch deck. Have a strong, simple pitch deck, prepared, that really focuses on what makes your game like unique, and like really avoid like all the common pitch mistakes. Like get straight to your game's hook and potential market. And last but not least, here in this little graphic, we have leveraging your community as a business development tool. Like, turn early players into advocates. A strong community will market your game for free. And, you can build a strong community, for instance, on Twitch, as we learned before, or you can create a devlog. Show progress because that really builds hype and trust. There is thousands, no, that is maybe exaggerating, but there's really like a lot of tools that can make business development much more manageable. And not all of them are free. Some of them are, are free in the like basic options, and you need to pay for premium options and so on. But all of them can really help you stay organized and, track your contacts, research the markets, and connect with potential partners. And I would like to go into a couple of them because I found them very useful, and I got, feedback from other indie teams that I've been working with that they were using the tools. So I guess, it makes sense maybe to talk about them for a couple of minutes. So I want to point out that, there's different tools for different needs. So you need to ask yourself first, like, what do I need? If you want to do like market research and analytics, and that is, very important because you should understand the market and the audience for your game. Because that is crucial for BD, right? If you know what types of games perform well, where your potential players are, and how your competition is doing, then you can definitely also make better decisions when it comes to pitching and partnerships and pricings and so on. There is two tools, Steam Spy and Steam DB. They're both free in the base option. They're both pulling data from Steam. So what are they doing? Steam Spy, it shows like the estimated sales numbers and like player demographics and trends for like thousands of games that are listed on Steam. How does it help you? Before you go and pitch to a publisher, you can actually do like a research on similar games to understand the potential market size and also, like revenue expectations. What is the downside of Steam Spy? Like the estimates are not always like 100% accurate. Especially when it comes to more niche games, and we know that indie games indie games can be niche games too. SteamDB is also free, as I said before, in the base options. It does have optional support features. What does it do? It tracks how similar indie games perform over time, which gives you a realistic expectation for your launch. And that is good, right? And what is the downside here? Unfortunately, I mean, it's focused on Steam. So it will not help you, like with the general market, like both like Steam Spy and Steam DB. Downside is like they are only focused on Steam. So if you want to have a more comprehensive picture, you might want to look into WG Insights. What does WG Insight? Again, like it does track market trends. It can help with, revenue estimation and genre performance across platforms. And yes, that will help you to get the bigger picture, beyond just Steam. So Google Trend. Google is actually another company that I currently don't want to promote too much, but Google Trends is for free. And what does it do? It does show you like search trends, and it does show you like how search trends actually change over time for specific terms. And that can actually help you, you know, it can track rising interests in like game genre, but also mechanics and themes like cozy games or roguelikes and that kind of stuff. And that, you know, will help you to make like smarter decisions. The downside is that it doesn't provide industry specific data. And the other downside is that I really don't want personally, like currently, promote Google because they're pulling out of all the EIF efforts. Very important, mobile games. We do have mobile games as well, and they want to have tools too. Game Data Crunch or Sensor Tower, both freemium with paid options. What they do, they track mobile, but also PC game markets. They offer insights into downloads, revenue, and trends. So if you're into launching a mobile game, like these are essential, like really essential. To understand like the competitive landscape. So again, you know, it is really like what tool is best for you. That depends if you need to analyze the market, or if you need, you know, to find funding partners, or if you want to network, or if you want to track conversation. Then it really depends which tool you could use. Before we go into the Q&A, that is very much my last slide here. I really want to give you, you know, something very practical, like how you can actually start like with business development right away. It is like a small like business development execution plan, because I tell you, business development will only work if you make it a habit. And there is like a very simple way how you can integrate business development without getting overwhelmed. With the 30-minute weekly BD plan and the 3-month BD sprint. So the 30-minute weekly BD plan, what does it mean? It means that you take 10 minutes per week to check industry trends like Steam Spy, Discord, Blue Sky, wherever. You take 10 minutes per week to follow up on all your BD contacts. You talk to publishers, journalists, potential partners, yada, yada. And you take 10 minutes per week to engage with industry, like with networking, with peers, like you go networking, more social media, forums, and so on. Just engage with industry. And the 3-month BD sprint means that in the first month, you research publishers, platforms, and funding options. In the second month, you create your pitch materials, like make a one-pager, make the whole deck, make your Steam page, make everything. And in the third month, you actually execute like outreach, you refine, like, you know, based on feedback, and schedule like meetings. And by that, you will avoid that BD, you know, like becomes like a burnout feeling, because it is a long game, but it shouldn't feel like, you know, like burnout. So what are the key takeaways from today's sessions? Business development happens really early. It's not about, you know, spending money, but it's about making smart and intentional decisions. You can use tools and networking platforms to streamline your process, and BD is an ongoing process that is about relationships. And yeah, at the end of the day, you know, it is what will help you to survive in a very competitive market. And what connects you a great game, you know, with the right players, the right partners, and the funding sources. Thank you.
There I am. This was awesome. Thank you so much. We've got a bunch of questions. I love that plan. You just make it sound so easy. Robert says, okay, Robert Madsen on YouTube couldn't understand the names of most of the tools. You will be able to go back and watch this on YouTube, and yes. That certainly will help. We've got a bunch of questions, so we got a rapid fire round for you. Okay.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, question number 1 from Emily on LinkedIn. Do you get much response to follow-ups during big events? Everyone is so busy. I tend to wait until a couple days after the event has finished. Is this wrong?
No, Emily, that is absolutely not wrong. I just do that like at the event right after the meeting because otherwise I personally get completely overwhelmed with all the follow-ups. And, I really hate like sitting in front of my computer for like hours and hours after the events, like doing all the follow-ups. So if I have the time, I follow up right after the meeting. And then, very often, it takes like 1 or 2 weeks until people get back to me. And if they then not get back to me, I will follow up again and tell them like, hey, this happened in the meantime. Here's a picture of me and my cat. That is the plan. How are you? How's life?
Just to
That
know
is
that you're
not
thinking
wrong,
about
Emily.
them, right? Just to know that you're thinking about them.
Yes.
My recommendation for that is like, don't send out any messages until, like, if you go to GDC, don't send out messages until like the time that you are ready to receive messages.
Yes.
Right? Because it could be too early. So, this person mailed me 3 weeks later after GDC. Who was that? What did we talk about? But that's my personal thing. Okay, next question from Brian Burbage on LinkedIn. What if you're really bad at networking? I've always been someone who does great after the ice has been broken, but breaking the ice has always been an issue for me.
Yeah. Brian, you know what? I could talk hours about like that only. What I absolutely recommend to you is you go and look for Mafaida Duarte. Mafaida Duarte has published a networking playbook. It's fabulous. It is with like a lot of little tips how you can network when you're really suck at networking. And you know what? It also gives you great tips if you're not like very confident, like how you can find, for instance, networking buddies. So check for Mafaida Duarte, the networking playbook. It is, I think, like 10-page PDF. It is funny, it is cute, it is like very entertaining, and it gives great tips how you can network if you're not good at networking and if you don't have like any network at all, because that is another thing. We all have to start at some point. And even I like sometimes I go to events like in other regions of the world where I know no one, and that feels weird for me. Even after 15 plus years, it feels weird for me getting into a room where I know no one.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, I talk a lot, and it's easy.
There's a couple different kind of networkers. There's like the me at a conference across the hall. Hey, so and so, right? And then there's the people that are not. Okay, let's see, from Aqua Metaverse, which is awesome. Solo dev. I heard Steam many times. Do you recommend other platforms?
For what?
They have a PC.
What exactly is the question? To publish? Oh yeah, there's a tons of other platforms that I could recommend you to publish. Like, here's the thing. At the end of the day, you need to ask yourself, like, who is my users and where is my users? And then you should publish there. But all platforms take revenue shares, some more, some less. And I think, that is what very often, I don't want to use the term, but kills the indies that like the money. They don't receive the money. And this is, I guess, why there is currently such a big trend of so many people, like with web stores, for instance, having their own web stores.
Yeah.
To have, a walk around the revenue share that you would have.
Yes.
With platforms.
Well, this has been amazing. And there's a lot more questions. So I'm going to put it's discord.gg/indiegamebusiness. I don't know why that didn't work for somebody, but that should work for everybody. If you could stick around into the Discord a little bit, if you scroll down, there's a section called February IGB sessions, and there's an AMA questions channel over there. If you all could go over there, I've already tagged Astrid in it. If you guys could go over there and ask your questions, then there's some amazing questions that really need some answers. They need some answers, Astrid. So
okay, I'm ready for some answers.
ready for some answers. So go on over there. We've got another session coming up right now. This is Lynn Sovig. Why your budget is your BFF. That's a good one. Why your budget's your best friend. So that's going to be interesting. Yes, it's going to be awesome. So everyone go over to Discord. If you're not in Discord, get over there anyways, because like it's a networking tool, right? So thank you so much, Astrid. This has been super helpful.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.